The chandelier I built for when my sister had her wedding in the barn is on a cable that runs up to the peak of the barn, runs along the ridgeline, and back down to this reel so I can lower it down or raise it up and get it out of the way. I want to move the reel downstairs to this wall here for a couple of reasons. One is because I would love to turn the loft of the barn into my office one day. I'm not sure when that would happen, but a guy can dream. And if I did that, the reel would have to be moved anyways. And two, I think the reel's a cool feature of the barn, and you just can't see it up here. I've always regretted putting it up here in the loft instead of downstairs where it's more visible. I also have been wanting to get the wall finished up and insulated, so I think it makes sense to do both things at the same time. The first thing I gotta figure out is the electrical. I gotta move some of these switches and reroute some of these wires, which I think is gonna be a pain in the butt.
Took the time to label everything. It all makes sense where everything goes until the moment you start putting it back together, I've found. With the switches out of the way, it's time to move the reel downstairs, which is the part I've been dreading the most. It was not fun getting it up into the loft of the barn, and I was sure it was going to be just as bad getting it back down. I lowered the chandelier all the way down until it was resting on the stop, so I could unfasten it from the reel.
I wasn't sure if there's gonna be enough cable on the reel to make it downstairs, but I think there's gonna be plenty. I must have done the framing after I got the reel in place because I don't think I can get it out without getting the framing out of the way.
Once I had the 2x4 cut out, I could drop the reel down and wheel it out of the way. Then I unbolted and removed the reel frame, which is just as heavy as the reel. I took my time and got it slid down the stairs carefully. I really try not to lift heavy things like this when I can avoid it. When I was younger, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. But now my back is catching up with me. I'm getting old man farmer back. But I knew there was going to be no way around lifting some heavy, awkward pieces on this project. I set the reel in place so I could figure out where it would work best, and I marked the location.
After doing some measuring, it's these two studs here that I gotta remove. I gotta get these wires out of the middle of the studs somehow.
I'm so excited to get this wall closed up. It's crazy how much wind can whip up through it somehow. I marked and cut out the framing to make space for the reel frame.
Man, good hailstorm going on outside. My thumbs get so sore when I haven't done electrical for a while. Get soft keyboard hands, it's embarrassing. Alright, I know nobody cares about the light switches, but I'm excited about them. They're nice and organized for the first time, so I'm going to show them. These are the 4 work lights down here. I got high bay 1, high bay 2. This is the under loft lighting, which I used to have over here. But it makes so much more sense having it over with the other ones. I'll take this out when I get a minute. And the last one is the back area for the CNC table. And then the top ones are the party mode lights. We got the hanging lights, the chandelier, which I can dim if I want, and then the string lights. Before they're all kind of intermixed, and I knew which ones to do because I've done it so many times, but it makes so much more sense having separated between the work lights and the party lights upstairs.
I drilled holes for new concrete anchors. There's the wind coming through it that I was telling you about. The frame needed to be extended, so I got it onto the welding table and cut off the top. I got some new feet on the CNC table. It's strange. Cutting heavy plate on the CNC table smells different than lighter material does. I like the smell actually. It probably would be my cologne if I had one. Heavy Plate by JD. Actually, this smoking cutting oil smells pretty nice too. But there's also a good chance I just really enjoy my hobby, and I've learned to enjoy these smells. I cut some square tubing to length, and then I remembered that I was butt welding it, which works a lot better with a gap, so I cut it again a little shorter. I grabbed a piece of heavy angle that I could clamp them down to, checked the measurement one last time, and welded them up.
The good news is, this is now heavier.
It kind of wedged in place, but I just knew as soon as I took my eye off it that it was going to whack me in the back of the head. So I stuck a handyman jack on it to help hold it. I drove a 1/2 inch by 6 inch lag bolt in on both sides.
Didn't quite get it set. It's my goal for the day. I still have to do the concrete anchors at the bottom, but it's date night, so I better run.
While Kelly and Justin are on date night, I'm going to tell you about all the 3D printing I've been doing lately with my Bamboo A1 3D printer. I printed a bunch of parts on my last project, the electric conversion I did on the Kid Squad.
What's that, Bon?
The first one was a cover to go over the motor, which was a pretty big piece and took a lot of supports underneath the curved top side. I designed a second smaller piece to enclose the motor shaft.
It's really satisfying pulling away the supports. This was a long print, but it doesn't feel that long because I just hit start and walk away. I don't have to babysit the machine, go out to the barn and work all day. I come back in and it's done.
One really cool feature of the A1 is that it automatically switches over to another spool if you have more of the same filament loaded onto the printer. I was printing a plate to hold one of the batteries. It ran out mid-print and switched over all on its own and kept printing without a hiccup. Such a cool feature. I like designing in SketchUp since I'm so familiar with it. It's so easy to import the models directly into the Bamboo Studio software, which automatically adds supports and slices the model. I had literally zero experience 3D printing a month ago, and it's just been so surprisingly easy for me to get up and running.
This is the first charger cover that I made, and I didn't quite get it right. Had some clearance issues. So I kept hacking on it with the Dremel until I got it to fit, and then I could measure it and got it reprinted right here. It's pretty dang cool being able to make quick revisions like that. And this is the back half piece right here, just fresh off the printer. All this stuff right here is supports that the software automatically adds to support the overhang piece right here. And it's designed to easily break away when it's done printing. Okay, now the most satisfying one. I get such a kick out of designing the parts. On this one I put little tabs so it clips together because this one is too big for the tray. It needs to be done in 2 pieces. And I have little spots where the cords come out of the charger. It's fun getting to pretend you're a product designer.
The Bamboo A1 is an entry-level price printer, and it manages to deliver print quality and volume comparable to high-end machines, and is the only mature multicolor printing solution in this price range. Especially considering what the A1 costs, it's just been a game changer for me in my shop having the 3D printer, and it's quickly changed how I approach problems and think about making things. Even this tiny little bushing I made for the ignition, it's just something I couldn't have made before. With the very impressive tolerances, it's snapped tightly into place with a satisfying click.
I don't need the fuel tank anymore, and so there's a hole right where the fuel cap was, and I wanted to print a part to cover it up. And the front of the part kind of drops off, And so where that curve is, you can kind of see each of the individual layers. And then I had the idea that maybe if I stood the part on the edge and reprinted it, that it wouldn't have those different layers. And sure enough, it's just like a perfect finish across the front. It's been really fun for me experimenting with different ways of orienting the pieces to get the best print quality.
Even if you don't have 3D modeling experience or interest, there are so many free models you can download from MakerWorld. I found an amazing model of fully articulated hands that I had to print. It's an incredible model. Each individual piece was numbered to help you put it together, and everything snapped right together. I really want to thank Bamboo for their support. There's a link in the description to learn more about the A1, and I really want to encourage you to check it out, especially if you're someone like me who just never had any experience with 3D printers and didn't know what they're capable of. The chandelier cable doesn't have a direct shot to the reel. The loft floor blocks it, so I needed to add another pulley. I cut some tubing and got it welded together. It turned into kind of an odd shape, but it's meant to fit in the corner of the wall. I held it in place and marked which studs I needed to trim. I grabbed the multi-tool, which has to be the most annoying sounding tool. But it is very handy. Then I got the pulley frame in place, plumbed up, and sunk a few lag bolts into it. I've been playing through Hogwarts Legacy lately, and I came across a pulley design that I thought would work well. I took a screenshot and imported it into VCarve. Great game, by the way. I never thought I would enjoy a Harry Potter game so much. The main part of the pulley I'm cutting out of half-inch plate. The outer ring pieces I pieced together from some 3/8 thick scrap that I had left over from a previous project. I needed to weld them together, which I used a template for. I got it centered on the pulley and welded it. I welded on a 1-inch shaft and slid the bearings onto it on both sides. It had a slight wobble, but not too bad for something not done on a lathe. Before I could insulate the wall, I needed to fasten the metal siding on the outside of the barn. I don't know why I waited many years to do this. It took me like an hour to do, and it sealed up the wall so nicely. I should have done it a long time ago.
One thing I've been struggling with on this project is I have 2 more spots open on the breaker panel that I might want to use later on. And once I get the wall closed up, it's going to be really hard to get the wire to it. And I was wondering about maybe using conduit or something that I could fish the wire through later on. And then I realized I can just run the wire up to the wall, which is open upstairs, and I'll cap it and tape it and just leave it for later. I think that'll work pretty good.
In the loft, I got the 2 lines taped up and stapled them to the stud. I labeled them and tucked them into the bottom of the electrical box. I have to be the only one crazy enough to CNC plasma cut my own nail plates. I knew I'd be sinking some screws into the wires and the studs if I didn't use some nail plates. It's a very small percentage of the barn that's insulated. I mean, heck, I don't even have heat in the barn yet. But as I finish various walls, I take the time to insulate them really well. I know I'll never go back and do it if I don't do it now. It's time to get the reel bolted back in place. The inner bearing is going to be inside the wall in the insulation. When I designed the reel, I wanted to hide as much of the reel frame as I could in the wall, so you'd mostly just see the reel. And then I switched over to sheathing. It was not easy working around the pulley and the reel. In fact, it was quite hard. The battery-powered jigsaw is so nice for trimming. It's so convenient not having to worry about cords. It took me a whole day to get this small section sheathed. It was a slow go. Where there weren't studs, I directly fastened the sheathing to the metal frame. I pre-drilled it and then used wood to metal screws, which worked really well actually. It was a real pain working behind the reel, I gotta say.
I think it fits!
But I got it done, all while having a helper in the barn with me.
No. Getting closer though.
The next day I headed over to the other side of the farm to rob some wood for the walls.
I'm not a huge pallet wood guy, but we have a ton of it here in the farm, and I think it'll work okay for the barn wall.
Frogs were doing their best to make it a serene evening against all my hammering. I sorted through all the pieces by size and settled on 3 standards for the width of boards. It's going to be important for them all to be the same, so there weren't any gaps. I ripped both sides of each board and then ran them through the thickness planer, cleaning up the back side of the boards and making them all the same thickness. I gave them all a real light sanding, mostly just to clean off the dirt and knock up any slivers. I've learned that for things like this, it's so much easier if you start in the middle of the wall with a nice plumb line and then work outwards from there. If you start against the edge of the wall, it's usually not plumb, especially here in the barn, and things get out of whack pretty quickly. I decided to put a little glue on each board. I used the brad nailer to hold the boards in place. It's nice because you really can't see the brad nail holes hardly at all, and I just nailed wherever. It's quite a bit easier doing the small boards when it came to trimming around the plugs and the reel than it was with the sheathing. But it was still a pain getting in behind the reel. I liked how the pallet wood looked a lot more than I thought it was going to actually. It fit right in here in the barn. It took a ton of time though, most of which was getting it prepped with the ripping, planing, and sanding. With the switch covers on, I was ready to reattach the cable. I tightened down the 2 cable clamps on the end and started reeling it up. Seemed like it was working well. It wasn't too hard to reel up. but I definitely wouldn't want to see what would happen if my hand slipped. Threw a safety lock on it. I'm really happy I took the time to move the reel. I think it looks right at home at the bottom of the stairs. And it's going to be great having this wall finished up. It's something I've been meaning to do for a long time. No more wind coming through the bottom of the metal siding is going to be awesome. And I've always worried when I'm welding or grinding about sparks bouncing down behind the backside of the stairs and potentially starting fires. So it's going to be really nice having it closed up and not worrying about that. I have many more walls to go in the barn, but I'm making progress.